Little Hope is the newest game in the Dark Pictures anthology series from Supermassive Games. It tells the story of a group of students and their teacher who wind up stranded in a mysterious town, where they're trapped by a sinister fog and chased by monstrous figures. Or does it? From here on out, this video is going to be all spoilers, so if you don't want to know how the game ends, you'd better stop now. And if you want to understand how the game ends, well, that's what I'm here for. Alright, ready? It was all a dream. That's the ending. The only fully real thing we see in the game is the house fire that kicks it off. The Clark family, made up of James, Anne, and their adopted children, Dennis, Tanya, and Megan, get killed in a fire. Megan has severe emotional problems, which may or may not have something to do with the fact that the devil is constantly whispering in her ear, so she decides to set the house on fire. This wouldn't be such a problem other than the fact that she locks her mother and sister in their rooms and knocks down the ladder that would have let Dennis escape the attic. Add to that the father sleeping drunk on the couch, and the result is that everyone gets trapped in the house with the flames other than Anthony, who is locked outside. I guess the devil didn't care whether he lived or died? Anyway, everybody dies gruesomely except for Anthony. But a neighbor sees him holding a box of matches, so there's some confusion about who started the fire, and Anthony gets arrested by the police. He's cleared of any involvement once the fire investigators find Megan's burned doll in the kitchen, and hear testimony about her history of playing with matches. But there are still plenty of hard feelings coming Anthony's way from the town generally, and Tanya's boyfriend Vince specifically. Anthony himself is also tormented by survivor's guilt, and his life spirals into mediocrity. Meanwhile, the town suffers, collapsing after its main source of employment, a textile mill, shuts down. Nearly everyone moves away, and the town is left to rot. Finally, some 48 years later, the now 66-year-old Anthony is working as a bus driver for the Ferryman Company. He's been reading a book about witchcraft and has started to imagine versions of his family members living in the present day at the ages they were when they died originally. When forced by a state trooper to take a detour through his hometown of Little Hope, the stress gets to be too much for him. He imagines a vision of Megan standing in the middle of the road, swerves to avoid her, and then crashes the bus. Suffering from a concussion and inspired by the book on witchcraft he was reading, Anthony has a psychotic break and imagines that he was killed along with his family members in the fire, and they've all been reincarnated as a group of students and their teacher traveling on a field trip. In his fantasy, they've been cursed because of their involvement in a witch trial over 300 years in the past, and are living out a cycle of gruesome death and rebirth again and again. The meat of the game involves the players making decisions about what kind of people his family really were, through conversations and their reactions to threats, all aimed at the goal of getting Anthony to forgive Megan for starting the fire, and to forgive himself for surviving while the rest of his family died. If things go very well, he can even get Vince to apologize for hating him for so long and accept that it wasn't Anthony's fault that the fire was started. So, to be clear, nothing supernatural actually occurs during the main action of the game, and the story is really about Anthony deciding whether to kill himself or forgive himself. Would the game be changed at all if it actually was a story of curses, magical time travel, and reincarnation? No, and I'd argue that it would probably be better, but that's a conversation for another time. There are plenty of clues pointing to the fact that all is not what it seems in the town of Little Hope. I'm going to focus on the big ones that let you know for certain that the entire experience is a dream. The bus is a huge clue that happens right at the start of the game. When Anthony is walking out to it, you can clearly see that the bus company is named Ferryman. After the bus crash, however, we can see that the name has changed to Ferryman, with an E and a Y, an obvious reference to Charon, the ferryman that transports people to Hades. During the flashbacks, the players may notice this man, the executioner responsible for killing everyone in the witch trials, is played by the same actor who played the state trooper at the beginning of the game. Since the state trooper sends Anthony off to crash the bus, this man has been recast in his fantasy as a sinister functionary causing people's deaths. Now, it's possible that the state trooper could be that man reincarnated, but this next familiar face proves that it's obviously just all a hallucination. As you can see, Wyman, the judge responsible for convicting people of witchcraft and sending them to be executed, is Asian. Obviously this can't be a real person, since the Puritans were entirely white, other than their black slaves, of course. This man's presence in the flashbacks immediately proves that they can't have actually happened. So why does Anthony cast an Asian man as the judge in his flashbacks? Simple. Back when the house burned down, a neighbor ran up to check on Anthony, and it's the same man. This neighbor saw Anthony with the matches in his hand and told the police about it. This led to a brief period of Anthony being publicly suspected of starting the fire, even leading to him considering suicide in the jail cell where he was being held. As a result, he's cast the neighbor in the role of the man who destroys everyone's lives, because that's the role he played in Anthony's life. This last clue gives the game away entirely. The curator is talking about the plot, and he shows off a 5-card hand. There are 3 male cards and 2 female cards, which is the gender breakdown of the main characters. Then, when the curator turns them back over, they're all the same card. The message is clear. Despite looking like different people, all of the characters are actually the King of Hearts, Anthony. This reveal at the end of the game opens up a pretty big question. What actually happened to the town of Little Hope? Obviously nothing supernatural happened during Anthony's trip through the town. He wandered around, saw Vince a couple of times, then either went to jail briefly, died, or forgave himself based on the player's choices during the game. What about all the secrets the player found during the game, though? About the evil reverend and the original witch trials? In all likelihood, none of that actually happened. There's no reason to believe that there was ever a witch trial in Little Hope, or that any of the characters he imagines have historical analogues. The game's secrets craft an elaborate story in which an evil preacher, either greedy for power or driven mad by the loss of his wife in King William's War, killed a bunch of people in town to A. consolidate his ownership of land in the area, or B. clear the way for him to groom Mary to become a replacement for his wife. Or honestly, both. It's creepy, it's awful, and none of it actually happened. We don't even know if the Carver family is a real part of the town's history. Yes, the player finds notes about them, and sees this poster of a Mayor Carver, but the picture of the entirely imagined judge inside the textile mill proves that any secret the group finds is likely just another flight of Anthony's imagination. Anthony's mind is so desperate to create a meaning in his family's deaths that he takes one strange aspect of them. The fact that each death corresponded very broadly with how people were killed in witch trials, burned, hanged, pushed off a great height, crushed, or drowned. His mother didn't actually drown, of course, but he extrapolates that based on the fact that the last thing he knew, she was going for a bath. And then he creates the fantasy that it was a recursive series of deaths that happened over and over again throughout history. The only things we can confirm actually happened is that Megan was troubled by a demon, the local pastor tried to counsel her about it, and then she burned down the house, killing almost all of her family. Was the demon real, or just something she imagined? Well, we see it, so it was probably real, but the argument can be made that we're just seeing her point of view in that scene, and it's a creation of her mind. Just like Anthony's various beasts later on. There's no convincing evidence on offer either way. In previous Supermassive games, I've been able to spend plenty of time poring over the massive plot holes that got left in the finished product, but this time, there's almost nothing to address. Because nothing actually happens in the story, it doesn't matter if the events don't make sense, because they're just the fantasies of a fractured mind. There is one problem worth mentioning, however, and it's this. When the state trooper comes to talk to Anthony, he notices that the man is distressed. Then Anthony talks about needing to get his passengers to their destination on time, but the trooper checks, and there's no one on the bus. This is a cop seeing a man acting squirrely while driving a large vehicle, and then the man suggests that he might be having hallucinations, and the state trooper does nothing about it. No further questions, no sobriety test, nothing. That's a bit of a stretch. This is an incredibly easy fix, though. All the writers had to do was have the bus driver not mention any passengers, and just say he has a schedule to keep. But they wanted to make sure the audience was deceived, and worried that the disembodied voices weren't good enough, so they went ahead and made something unbelievable happen. As is always the case with the Dark Pictures games, Little Hope ends with a hint about what's coming next. Last time in Man of Medan, we got a brief flash of Tanya's death, and this time we get to see another woman falling to her doom. It's a much more intriguing setting, however. A woman is rappelling in a cave while someone is messing with her line. She screams out for them to stop, but then the line is cut or broken and she falls. If you start with this clue, add it to the picture on the spine of this book, this newspaper from Man of Medan, and this statement by the curator.
Till we meet again, maybe in the South Pacific or the Arabian Desert,
It looks like the game is going to be about a group of people who either go to investigate or possibly stumble onto the remains of an archaeological expedition in the Middle East, at which point they start getting murdered. Are there monsters? A greedy teammate trying to keep some treasure all for themselves? Is it all another dream? We can't say just yet, but I'm excited to find out. There may also be a clue about the fourth game in the series as well. As you can see in this scene, we get a look at the spines of each book which represents a game in the series. The first one is a boat for the Orang Medan, the second one is the witch symbols from this game, the third is a crescent moon, often used to represent Islam in the Middle East, and the final item is a compass. Now, a compass isn't a huge clue on its own. It's mostly associated with mapping, and of course it shares its name with the magnetic navigational tool, Compass, which shows up in all of the game's decision points, and, of course, is the franchise's logo. There might be a clue in the fact that compasses are also used for drafting, the main job of an architect, especially because there's an architect mentioned somewhere in Little Hope. If the player finds this magazine, they'll see a listing advertising a TV show called Architects of Murder. The episode is about telling the story of San Francisco and the Zodiac Killer. Is this going to be the plot of the fourth game? The Zodiac Killer has returned and players have to solve the mystery of it? Zodiac-style killings are an easy thing to flash back to at the start of a game, and this franchise sure loves its opening flashbacks. Even if it was just about a serial killer, which is what the term Architect of Murder likely refers to, it would be an interesting direction for this series to take. So that's the story of Little Hope. I hope this has helped to explain a few of the game's more confusing elements, and if you have any questions, theories, or requests for elements of the game you'd like me to delve a little deeper into, just let me know in the comments section below the video. I've been the Hidden Object Guru, thanks for watching. I'll see you back here for more of the Dark Pictures content, but until then, au revoir.